O God, you are my God, and I will ever praise you. O God, you are my God, and I will ever praise you. I will seek you in the morning, and I will learn to walk in your ways, and step by step you'll lead me, and I will follow you all of my days. O God, you are my God, and I will ever praise you. O God, you are my God, and I will ever praise you. I will seek you in the morning, and I will learn to walk in your ways, and step by step you'll lead me, and I will follow you all of my days, and I will follow you all of my days, and I will follow you all of my days, and step by step you'll lead me, and I will follow you all of my days.
Good evening. Hope you're doing well tonight. I'm really excited to know that you're watching this evening. You're participating in our midweek Bible study. Really excited to know that. Thank you for joining us. Tonight I want to briefly talk about one of my favorite characters in the Bible. Her story is found at the beginning of 1 Samuel, and her name is Hannah. I like her story so much that I even named our daughter after her, so you can see kind of the importance that story holds to me. But Hannah was a Jewish woman that was living in the time between the judges and the monarchy in Israel, and she had a very specific problem. Hannah was married, but she could not produce any children. Now, that, of course, is a very difficult situation for any woman to find herself in. Even these days, the pain of wanting to be a parent but not being able to, to have that happen for you, that can produce a whole lot of despair and discouragement and even depression. So it really painful even today, and especially was back then as well, as it was thought of to immediately be the wife's fault in those circumstances. None of the blame was put on the husband. And of course, that's not fair, and we know that's not even scientifically accurate anymore, but that's just the way it was back then. So Hannah would have taken on the majority of the blame there, or all the blame, really. And then even beyond that, that was even thought of to be a curse by God. To be barren and not be able to produce children, that they thought that was God punishing you for something. God had looked unfavorably upon you because of that. So Hannah was going to have a very difficult time based on those circumstances. But it even gets worse for her because her husband Elkanah had another wife, Peninnah. And Peninnah did produce children. She had many children, and she would let Hannah know about this. She would rub it in, really stick it to Hannah, and make Hannah's life miserable. So as you can imagine, all this really built up on Hannah's emotions, and she was having a very difficult time. And I want you to listen to a little bit of this story in 1 Samuel chapter 1. Hope you'll turn there with me. And we'll start in verse 6. And Hannah's rival, that's Peninnah, the other wife, used to provoke her grievously to irritate her, because the Lord had closed her womb. So it went on year by year. So every year she was dealing with this. As often as she went up to the house of the Lord, she, that is Peninnah, used to provoke Hannah. Therefore Hannah wept and would not eat. And Elkanah her husband said to her, Hannah, why do you weep? And why do you not eat? And why is your heart sad? So Hannah, it sounds to me like it's dealing with depression. Doesn't it sound like that to you? She was sad, grieved in her heart. She wept openly, bitterly, and she refused to eat. Okay? Then we're going to keep going in verse 10. She was deeply distressed and prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly. And she vowed a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your servant and remember me, and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall touch his head. So Hannah, in her despair, cried out to the Lord. And she made a deal with him, made a vow. She said, God, I just want one son. That's all I'm looking for. If you will open my womb, if you will give me one child, one son, I'll be forever thankful. And in fact, so thankful, I will give him over to you. He will be given to your service the rest of his life. He will never cut his hair. He'll take this vow. He will be yours every single day of his life if you'll just give me this son. It comes true. God agrees, apparently. God opens her womb. She has a son named Samuel. And Hannah follows through without any hesitation that I can find. It doesn't say that she resisted giving her son over to God. She handed him over. You think that must have been difficult? Think that was hard for Hannah? She had been in the pits of despair, weeping bitterly, refusing to eat, crying out to God. Finally, she has this son, the thing that she had wanted more than anything. But she doesn't get to keep him. She has to willingly hand him over to God. You think that might have been difficult? Yeah, I think so. But I want you to notice this prayer that Hannah offers in chapter 2. We'll just read a couple verses here. And Hannah prayed and said, this is after she gives up her son, my heart exults in the Lord. My horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth derides my enemies because I rejoice in your salvation. There is none holy like the Lord, for there is none besides you. There is no rock like our God. This woman who was just in the pit of despair, after doing this very, very difficult thing of handing her son over, manages to boldly proclaim this prayer of how she exalts, she praises, she rejoices in the Lord, and that there is no one that she can trust other than God. Pure joy radiates out of her as she says this prayer. So in just one chapter and a couple verses, we have this woman go from the lowest of lows to the highest of highs with a very difficult situation in between. It almost seems kind of like a roller coaster of emotions, doesn't it? Down in the depths of despair, up on the mountaintops of praise. All in just a chapter. In 9-10 months? It seems to me that if this were to happen today, we would maybe want to diagnose a disorder here or prescribe some kind of medicine or whatever. But that's not what's happening here in this story. This isn't a woman who has any kind of disorder or disability or any kind of problems, really. This is a woman who is simply experiencing life. At least that's the way I look at it. This is a woman in Hannah who is experiencing life. Doesn't that perfectly describe life? Lows and highs, peaks and valleys. A constant roller coaster of emotions and experiences. Life is full of good. And it's full of bad. And the Bible attests to that pretty clearly. We have the story of Hannah. We also have verses like Philippians 4:4, where the Apostle Paul says, rejoice always in the Lord. And then in case you didn't get that message, he says, again I say rejoice. Rejoice always in the Lord. Again I say rejoice. He tells us in every situation, praise God. That's a biblical message. But then we also have an entire book like Lamentations, which is about a group of people experiencing punishment and crying out to God and really going through the range of emotions there, the despair, the hopelessness, the difficulties. That's the biblical story. Highs and lows in life and how to react to those. Obviously, both of those things can be true. Yes, we need to rejoice in the Lord always. Whenever life is good, whenever you're experiencing those highs and things are going the way you want, be thankful to God. Shout it from the mountaintops how much you praise Him. Give Him honor and glory for what He's done for you. Do that. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. Do that. But then whenever it comes to the lows of life, on one hand, yes, still rejoice during those times. There should be a core of us as Christians that even when life is difficult, we're able to see what God has done for us. We're able to trust in Him and put our hopes in Him and say, God, even though this life isn't going the way I want it to, you are still there for me, and I'm still going to rejoice in you. Absolutely, that's true. But also, during the times of lows, it's okay to experience that. It's okay to experience grief, loss, despair, depression. All those things are natural emotions. They're God-given emotions, and it is okay to experience them. It's not wrong to grieve when we're hurting. Like Ecclesiastes tells us, that there's a time for joy and there's also a time for weeping. There's a time for mourning and there's a time for dancing. There are appropriate times for both of those emotions in our lives, and it's okay to share them. You know, maybe there hasn't been a year that has shown us that more than this one right now. There have been some good moments, of course. You know, when we got to come back together again as a church, that was something to rejoice in. And we can see the joys in this life even when things are hard. Of course we can. But there's been plenty of times this year that the grieving has been appropriate. The weeping has been appropriate. The despair has been appropriate. As we've had to be distant for so long. As we've gone about the fear that's happened with this pandemic. The loss we've experienced from people that we desperately love so much and we miss. We've experienced those lows this year. And it's perfectly fine, acceptable, and in fact it is encouraged to express that grief. Yeah, rejoice in the Lord always. Of course rejoice in God for what He's done for us. But when life is tough, when it's hard, when it's difficult, when you're between the rock and the hard place, you can grieve. It's acceptable and it's encouraged. Hannah grieved. She wept bitterly, she refused to eat, and it was appropriate for her. It's appropriate for us too. So I don't know what exactly you're going through right now. I don't know how 2020 has affected you. If you're in a high right now, or if you're in a low, wherever you find yourself right now, it's okay. It's okay to express grief if that's where you're at. That's normal. That's acceptable. It's appropriate. So do that. If you need to grieve, grieve openly. Weep bitterly. Also, however, let's rejoice in the Lord at all times. Even when we're grieving, let's find the ways to rejoice. We can experience both. We're capable of that. And throughout both of those things, the rejoicing and the grieving, God is there, and He never leaves us. Look forward to seeing you Sunday morning. I hope that this Devo is finding you well tonight, and I really look forward to worshiping with you again soon.